Ever since The Simpsons started the trend, animated sitcoms have given us the best glimpse into the nuclear family, oftentimes using the dynamic of a married couple and their children. We've looked at many of these shows from a morality standpoint, but occasionally we like to look at one character archetype in particular. And today we're looking at the husbands. In all of these adult cartoons, which of the husbands come off as the most good, and which ones are downright evil? I'm Rachel D. Champlain from Wicked Binge, and this is Adult Cartoon Husbands, Good to Evil.
You don't understand the young people!
Now, let's go over today's rules. For this list, we'll be going over the most recognized husbands of adult animation, those who are more fleshed out on their shows and show the partnership they have with their spouses, for better or worse. We'll be ranking based on how well they work as a team and how healthy they are for their wife or partner, and to a certain extent, their family as a whole. Keep in mind, we've already done an adult cartoon moms Good to Evil episode, and if you want an adult cartoon dads episode that ranks these characters specifically on their fatherhood skills, let us know. As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure and noble characters and working our way down. These characters are the good husbands. Let's get started with Bob Belcher. He is a family man through and through. He's not the best with dates, such as birthdays or anniversaries, but since he forgets his own birthday as easily as he forgets everyone else's, we do cut him some slack.
It feels nice, really nice.
Get a room!
In most adult cartoons, you typically have the neglectful husband and the nagging housewife, but with Bob and Linda, that isn't the case. Bob makes an effort on her birthday, tries to give her a real striptease on Valentine's Day, and takes up projects with her such as knitting, building paper airplanes, and making costumes for their kids. He really does put in the effort. I mean, he took up an art class so that his wife would see him as an artist and endures time with Gail, even dragging the woman through the snow on a sled because it's important to his wife.
You thought you could beat me, but you can't!
Bob really does his best, and for that, we're giving him the gold medal. This might be a bit of an odd pick for number 2, but Dale Gribble comes in next with the silver medal. He is one of the most dedicated husbands on the list. Now, Dale has a lot of problems, and he can be especially cruel to those around him, specifically weaker people like Bill. But with that said, this cruelty is never directed towards his wife or son, even when the whole world knows what she does when he's not looking. Though an awkward guy, he puts his wife on a pedestal. He praises her career, and even though his choices make their lives difficult both emotionally and financially, he does all he can to make Nancy happy.
I sorta have a crush on the weather gal.
He begs John Redcorn to heal her migraines. He trains and teaches vocational classes to help pay the bills, and he hijacked a news van to try and boost her career. Even after years of marriage, he makes sure to lavish her with compliments and brags about how beautiful and wonderful she is. When he was hit on by Sheila, the woman he admired as one of the best exterminators in the game, he rejected her, stating he was married to the greatest woman in the world.
But my wife is the greatest woman there ever was!
A weird and delusional guy, but a loyal one. Unfortunately for him, Nancy wouldn't rank on the good side of the inverse of this list. Just next door, Hank Hill is not the most romantic guy on the planet, but he does love his wife. He may have trouble expressing it at times, but his upbringing done by his father really did a number on him when it came to expressing his emotions. So although he loses a couple points for being closed off, he does make up for things with his great moral compass. Hank is not the best in romantic settings, but he does help Peggy feel more comfortable with herself, and given the fact that Peggy clearly struggles with self-esteem, which usually manifests in blatant narcissism, that says a lot. He offers to treat her to shoes when she's worried about not being feminine enough. He even went to defend her honor when she was tricked by the owner of a smut website dedicated to Peggy's feet.
You're gonna delete my wife's feet from your internet?
And while he isn't comfortable with Luann much of the time, he makes sure to help her feel like family and encourage her, knowing she means a lot to Peggy. Really, Hank is always there to clean up the problems of those around him. And many of these problems happen to be created by Peggy. He does this without asking for anything in return. And throughout the show, Peggy doesn't really offer him the same courtesy. Hank is an upstanding guy, and that's why he gets the bronze medal. Our favorite neighborino, Ned Flanders, adores his wife Maude, and it was one of the most tragic moments in Simpsons history when she was shot with a t-shirt gun.
Oh my lord, she's dead!
He was always loving with her, supporting her and their sons without fail. Their biggest arguments revolved around Ned not unplugging the phone for Homer's telemarketing scam, and Maude marking passages in his Bible rather than her own. Ned would probably drive many people crazy with his dedication to his religious moral compass, but he was a great husband to Maude. Keith is one of our more awkward men on this list. Prone to jealousy, he ends up losing his temper with Amy a lot due to her unintentional flirting with people. He loses points for his crippling insecurity and constant need to impress her, but we give him credit when he's able to save her after being kidnapped by the native Martians.
Thanks for saving my life, Kif.
You're my hero.
He had a hard time accepting that she wasn't ready to be tied down with marriage and kids, but held the burden by himself, still going through with the ceremony for their children on his own before Amy reappeared. Jeff, while loving his wife Haley, is simply not a mature husband. He is content living off his in-laws, staying in the bedroom his wife grew up in. He's not the only one at fault for that, since Haley is letting him stay in the home, but it dampens Jeff's reputation. That said, we give him some credit for thinking of his spouse's happiness. He contacts her as he's lost in space to tell her to move on with her life, as he doesn't know when or if he'll be able to return.
Move on, babe. I release you.
He fought to go back to Earth to be with her, claiming the aliens were keeping him from true love, which is quite an accomplishment that we can't overlook. Now, we all love Homer Simpson. He's the original cartoon husband and is the total manifestation of this trope. A lovable schlub who isn't all too bright. But Homer falls a bit lower on our list for some pretty glaring reasons.
Is there any room in that bed for a dad-burn fool?
While he's pretty sweet and well-mannered most of the time, he's had tons of selfish moments. Even in the very early seasons of the show, he ends up sneaking out to go fishing when they're meant to be on a marriage retreat, and that was after getting drunk and oogling Maud during their party. His dance with Princess Kashmir was one of the biggest scandals passed around Springfield, and he denied her going to therapy just so she wouldn't be talked out of leaving him. But Homer also adored his wife, refusing to cheat on her with Mindy, Lorraine, and a number of others just because Marge was his one and only.
You would have gone all the way with me, wouldn't you?
He's short-sighted at times, but always makes sure to make up for his mistakes. Still, although Homer is a good guy deep down, and does what's right for his family when push comes to shove, he is far from the most attentive husband. And many episodes have us sympathizing with Marge because of Homer's refusal to put in any effort when needed, oftentimes spending all of his free time drinking at the bar or laying on the couch watching TV. Not that that stuff is all bad, but he usually leaves Marge to take the reins and deal with family issues on her own. And we will say that Homer may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but everything he does do for his family. He just usually needs his arm twisted into doing it, and for that reason, we ranked him just inside the good husband section. With that said, we've arrived at the neutral territory. These cartoon husbands fall into the gray area. Lucky may not have been Peggy's first choice for her niece, but he wound up being a sort of sensible and honorable man. Eventually, he went from being all about flash and racing with his buddies and living off his settlement to being a somewhat dedicated husband and father.
I fully support Luann's ambition to be the breadwinner.
He encouraged Luann to pursue being a children's entertainer, staying home with their baby Gracie. He took Hank's advice to be more of a stable figure, going through all of the work of having a credit card, a social security card, and even getting a down payment on an actual home for their family. The whole reason he wanted his GED was so that he could consider himself good enough to marry the girl, which is a romantic thought.
Once I get that, I'll be good enough.
So we do give him credit for improving, but it's unclear how much of Hank's teachings truly stuck, as Lucky's moral compass and responsibility was pretty wildly out of whack initially, really just trying to find different schemes to avoid having to do any sort of work whatsoever. Moving on to Stan Smith. He was a tricky one to place. On the one hand, there have been episodes dedicated to Stan putting his needs and obsessions first, such as when he was met with his cyborg future self and when he left to go on tour with My Morning Jacket.
Don't even think you can get out of this by shooting me.
But we give Stan credit for doing what he thought he needed to keep his relationship. He was the first to give in when they separated the house over renovation disputes. He blinded himself, thinking it would make him a more attentive husband. He even built a security system, thinking he was protecting Francine. While his tactics were questionable, more than a few times, we can't dispute his perfect heaven revolving around Francine. Stan is nuts, and he's not the brightest, and he can be a real jerk to many, but he does love Francine. He just has some weird ways of showing it. We are going to rank Hermes and Apu together, due to their one shared flaw, putting work before their relationships. Both Hermes and Apu would be more than happy to dedicate all their time to their jobs, to the point that we barely see either of them interact with their wives or home life. Apu wound up having an affair with the squishy woman, and Hermes traded in almost all of his body for robot parts, despite La Barbara begging him to stop.
You must promise me you won't be getting any more upgrades.
They have moments where they're seen as sweet and attentive, but it's few and far between. Not awful people, but their relationship skills could use some work. Cleveland is much like Kif and Jeff, in that he is way too much of a pushover when it comes to his wife. But he's also a horrible burden on her. He barely makes any effort for her now that they're married.
If any part of this was my fault, I'm sorry.
He pays off the therapist to take his side in arguments, gets her drunk right before the debate, and lies to her about his improved fitness just to be left alone. But we give him a higher rank Hank because he also makes an effort to help with her ex and his relationship with the kids, treats her children like his own, and makes a fake scenario to get her friends to accept her again. Joe Swanson falls far due to his relationship with his wife in later seasons. In the beginning of Family Guy, Joe was a reliable and loving man, but as the show progressed, he was displayed as bitter and treated as subhuman.
You care about nothing except yourself.
Honestly, many of Family Guy fans have pointed out that the character directions the show took after the first 4 seasons really took a nosedive. Brian, Stewie, and yes, even Joe. Though he told his friends numerous times that his marriage was as strong as ever, it is easy to see that he feels underappreciated. He went to Paris to try and stop Bonnie from cheating on him, but then wound up sleeping with a female officer a short time later.
Did you bring protection?
Oh, don't worry, nothing comes out of the front.
He accused his wife of not doing anything for him when she helped clean and take care of him. And we can't forget the time he was able to get a leg transplant and tried to up and leave Bonnie while she was still pregnant. Granted, Bonnie shot him in return, so there are some serious problems all over that relationship, to say the least. The monarch was always bent with revenge, but much of his success and inspiration comes from his wife. His title, his henchmen, and many of his plans were due to his wife being a key player. He falls pretty far due to many of the things he lied to her about, and their relationship began as just a meeting in a hotel room every now and then. But he respected her input and always praised her for her help with gaining information on Venture and playing both sides to get him a higher villain ranking. Greg and Terry we are placing together, because while they seem like good partners at first, they slowly reveal to be awful people in their own way. Greg is incredibly demanding. He puts food restrictions on the home, but refuses to cook himself. He's a control freak that criticizes everything from furniture to personalities. He wants everything to be perfect all the time. Terry, on the other hand, puts up with Greg even though he's miserable because it's comfortable. He cares about Greg to some degree, but is more in it for the comfortable lifestyle. He undermines Greg's achievements, calling his local Emmy worthless when Stan tries to steal it and uses a Smith antic to break the figurines Greg adored, but Terry couldn't stand. And let's not forget how he tried to manipulate Greg when Roger was living with them as their son Michael, even resorting to trying to kill Roger to keep his darker side hidden.
What the hell's going on?
I'm trying to kill you.
Finally, we've reached the dark side. These cartoon husbands are the bad and the evil. Jerry Smith is honestly one of the most toxic husbands in animation. While one can argue that he does love Beth and that it's a good marriage at times, we have to look at all the evidence that says otherwise. No partnership is perfect, but when an alien marriage counselor is telling you you are not right for one another and that your relationship defies logic, that's a pretty big pill to swallow. Jerry's issues always revolve around either seeing Beth as a goddess or being resentful that she was smarter and more capable than him. Neither of those views are healthy, and it makes him act out in horrible ways. At the end of the day, Jerry isn't evil, but he has a lot of problems that make him especially toxic. Peter Griffin has fallen from grace since Family Guy started. He went from being a clueless idiot who took his wife for granted to being a horrible and inconsiderate jerk who abuses his children and takes his wife for granted. He lies to her continuously, makes a mess of everything he touches, and uses holding her loved items hostage such as her wedding dress to try and negotiate. When he became smarter for an episode, he constantly mocked her low intelligence and quizzes her on vocabulary.
I need to know how to use these words in sentences by the time Peter gets home.
When he thought he fell for a sex phone operator, he took the chance to cheat on his wife, not realizing it was Lois he was talking to. Sure, sometimes Peter and Lois are on the same team and connect really well, which oftentimes involves both of them being terrible together. But Peter throws his own wife under the bus when convenient on a regular basis. Avery Bullock and Buck are two more we have to place together due to their similarities. Both neglect their wives to live a life full of drinking, questionable enhancements, bad vices, and reckless brawling. Avery wound up leaving his wife in a terrorist hold simply because he refused to come off as weak by negotiating. He refused to be a part of her recovery when she was brought home, and didn't seem to care at all when she was killed by Ricky Spanish. Buck also wanted to play the field while still having a ring on his finger. He framed Hank to save Miss Liz from murder charges, but he also had no issue flaunting his dates in front of their shared friends. Cotton takes the silver medal for worst husband. He's loud, sexist, and emotionally abusive. He goes into fits of rage at the drop of a hat, breaking dishes and shouting derogatory names.
Get me weapons!
He openly mocks his first wife whenever he can, and treats his second wife like a servant who is only good for cooking, cleaning, and taking care of his second child. Cotton doesn't see women as anything more than a thing that he can use to amuse himself, and that transferred into all his relationships.
We was using 4 layers of protection and my men still got through.
He was really close to taking the gold for worst husband, But that title goes to someone else, just slightly. Finally, our gold medal of evil husband goes to Carter. He fits the standard rich guy trope, thinking that everything in his life has to be perfect and easy, and anything that doesn't fit can be handled with money. He frequently cheated on his wife and would leave her in a heartbeat for someone younger. When he left Babs for Trisha, he had Babs committed to an asylum for freaking out for no reason.
I told her I was leaving her and she freaked out for no reason.
He made her hide the fact that she was Jewish so he could join more exclusive clubs without hassle, and even their first meeting was one of violence. Carter believed that domestic abuse was acceptable and taught his wife that it was appropriate, which is downright sickening and manipulative. But this isn't surprising given the fact that Carter is one of the biggest monsters to come out of Family Guy. But what do you think? Who are the most good and evil husbands in adult animation? Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of characters in your favorite cartoons. Check out our Cartoon Moms episode. But most importantly, stay wicked.